As a forensic pathologist, here's what I saw when Charlie Kirk was. The gushing blood points to a jugular vein injury. His arms pulling inward is very typical of decorticate posturing, which occurs usually during catastrophic brain damage. At 200 yards with a rifle, which is what would probably cause that, bullets don't just pass through the neck, they would fragment and destroy everything in their path. With that kind of injury, he would have lost consciousness within seconds and survived for less than a minute and probably felt nothing. Law enforcement always finds the shooter, and violence in response to speech is never justified.
The autopsy is out, and they're saying Charlie Kirk didn't feel a thing. From the moment he was hit, it was over, gone instantly. That's why we have to be honest about this. It wasn't random. Left, right, or sitting on the fence with one cheek, this was an execution. Every assassination lands like a gut punch, but there are degrees. I'm not putting Charlie in the same bracket as Dr. King. In Memphis in 1968, King survived for hours in a hospital bed, giving the country time to hope, to pray, to imagine a different ending. Malcolm X in 1965 was rushed to Columbia Presbyterian after the attack at the Audubon Ballroom. Doctors fought to save him for a stretch before pronouncing him gone. Medgar Evers, shot outside his home in Jackson in 1963, was still breathing when carried into an emergency room. Charlie Kirk had none of that. If the autopsy reads the way folks expect, fatal trauma on impact, no survivable window, then this wasn't just about silence. It was precision. It was making sure there was no struggle, no last words, no deathbed moment to turn into a rallying cry. That cold, clinical, drop him where he stood style changes the meaning. It points to intent, and intent matters. In movements that Leonize martyrdom, the manner of death is raw material. If the report says what many suspect, people like Owens and Trumple use it as proof, not just that he was killed, but that he was deliberately erased. The speed of his death isn't just a detail, it's a framing device. It converts tragedy into narrative, and narratives are weapons. That framing will be broadcast, memed, stitched into speeches and feeds, shaping grief into grievance, shaping outrage into purpose. What matters now isn't just cause of death, but who gets to tell the story publicly.
People that are telling me that just within 48 hours before Charlie passed away, his top Jewish donors were pulling funding from him, demanding that Charlie take their name off of the building that they had donated to Turning Point. I guess I can figure out who that is, how many people could have donated a building. And then once Charlie was killed, they said, never mind, put it back on the building. Okay. Charlie himself had alluded to a tremendous loss of money coming in, and we'll speak about that more. More people are going to come out with information. This is all inevitable. Okay. And I'll also point you in this direction. You guys remember Bibi recently was on a PR blitz, despite the fact that he was, fighting this 96,000 front war because it do nothing. Okay. He was doing a ton of podcasts in America. He went on to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. He went on to Brandon Tatum's podcast. He went on to the Nelk Boys podcast. Anybody find it weird he didn't do Charlie Kirk?
Candace Owens didn't waste a breath on pleasantries. From the opening of her podcast, she framed Charlie Kirk's death not as a loss, but as a takedown. Not passed away, not tragically gone, but executed in broad daylight. She tore into anyone she believed was spinning or soft-pedaling the truth. What made her monologue sting wasn't only sorrow, it was rage. Owens admitted she wept, something she rarely does, then shifted straight into attack mode, accusing political figures and media personalities of twisting Charlie's story to fit their own agendas. She even singled out a prominent leader, accusing him of misrepresenting Kirk's final letter and trying to paint him as if he died a soldier for his country. You can guess who she meant. She wasn't naming names to be polite. In her telling, Kirk had been under relentless pressure, boxed in by billionaires and major donors angry at him for giving a platform to dissenting voices. That tension, she argued, was building to a breaking point long before his death, and ignoring it would be dishonest.
I tell you, he didn't work alone on the internet because it seems that he became radicalized on the internet. That's just by watching same things that you're watching and hearing. It looks like he became radicalized over the internet. And it seems like he has wonderful parents, brought in a wonderful neighborhood, smart guy, great boards, great marks. great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. It looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. We have a lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected. But as you understand, I think very well from the tone of your question. Thank you very much.
Trump jumped into the narrative in trademark fashion. His statements wrapped Charlie Kirk's death in the same fabric as his own brushes with danger. They tried to take me out, they took him out, and they'll try again. In Trump's telling, Kirk wasn't simply a fallen friend. He was proof of MAGA persecution, another brick in the wall of grievance. His team even circulated an image of Charlie's face between U.S. and Israeli flags, a visual that poured gasoline on the conspiracy, but Candace Owens was already feeding. The result looked like a split screen. On one side, Owens, raw, emotional, and framing Kirk's last days as those of a man under siege, hinting his refusal to bow to outside pressure sealed his fate. On the other, Trump inflating him into a movement symbol, a rallying cry for patriots who feel perpetually under attack. Their voices together drowned out almost every other conservative trying to issue a measured response. Mainstream outlets focused on Erica Kirk's widow's speech about keeping Charlie's mission alive. But online, it was Candace's anger, her accusations, her fire, her vow to block anyone from sliding into Charlie's chair that went viral. She wasn't only grieving. She was staking a claim as the guardian of his legacy, daring donors, allies, or politicians to contradict her. That's the spin war playing out now. Trump recasting Kirk as a martyr for MAGA, Candace casting him as a martyr for truth, leaving the public to sort through grief wrapped in conspiracy.
To wake up, because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy, you're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness.
Now let's get to the part that set the blogs on fire. The whispers about whether Charlie Kirk's death was random or had bigger fingerprints on it. And sis, the theory that won't quit is that he crossed the wrong people. I've said their names before, but from here on I'll call them the blue country in the Middle East. For years, Charlie was one of their staunchest defenders. You couldn't catch him on stage without him singing their praises, backing their policies, boasting about that special relationship with America. He fundraised with their allies, stood shoulder to shoulder with top lobbyists, and defended them on campus after campus. He was their golden boy.
Let me ask you, in the conflict of versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children.
But let's
futile.
Let's hear it out.
There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, for innocent populations, and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West's security.
You've made that point, but
it's not a point; it's a moral truth, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk.
About a year ago, the tone started to shift. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a faint change. Instead of the usual full-throated praise, Charlie began asking sharper questions. Instead of repeating talking points, he started hosting guests who weren't perfectly aligned with the narrative about that blue country in the Middle East. And in politics, even a hairline crack can look like betrayal. Fast forward to just days before his death. Charlie sat down with Ben Shapiro. Blog Chatter says the exchange got tense. He pushed harder than usual, drilling into policy, influence, and who really benefits from the billions America sends overseas. In hindsight, that interview plays like a warning shot. People are now replaying the clips and saying that was the moment he signed his own check.
And some people would accuse of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be? And how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that is quote unquote forcing people out of the Gaza Strip. That is not the stated policy of the government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to.
Candace Owens' podcast is where the story veers straight into conspiracy territory. She argued that Charlie was under intense pressure from billionaires and donors who didn't want him opening that door. Online, people started doing the math and suggesting those donors weren't only wealthy Americans, but also allies of that blue country in the Middle East. If Charlie really was preparing to step away from his longtime loyalty, that would have made him dangerous to powerful interests. History isn't neat either. Many who've criticized that region say they've been smeared, deplatformed, or cut off from funding. The narrative floating around is that if you speak too loudly against them, there's a price to pay. And in Charlie's case, some are whispering the cost wasn't just losing donors, it was ending up 6 feet under. Owens' timeline feeds that storyline. A year of subtle criticism, a tense sit-down with Ben Shapiro, her own claims about billionaire pressure, and then, suddenly, Charlie gone instantly. No chance to fight back, no chance for last words. That's why the online chatter keeps asking whether this was random violence or a warning shot to anyone else thinking of breaking ranks.
However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite.
All right, sis, let's step back for a sec, because history shows the real danger often comes from inside the tent, not outside it. And that's the whisper that won't leave the Charlie Kirk story. Not just who pulled the trigger, but who stood to gain when he was gone. Charlie wasn't a random activist. He was a brand, a movement. Turning Point USA wasn't just a campus vibe. It was a multi-million-dollar engine fueled by donors and billionaire backers with Charlie as the golden boy. Pull him off the stage and you don't just lose a voice. You create a vacuum, an empty throne. Everybody suddenly has a resume and a roll call of reasons why they belong in that chair. Candace didn't couch it as metaphor. She flat out warned people were circling to slide into Charlie's seat. That's not drama. That's politics. Think about it. Betrayal isn't new. Julius Caesar didn't fall to strangers. He fell to senators he trusted. Power eats loyalty. So who benefits from Charlie's silence? The donors who thought he'd wandered off script? Other conservative influencers who've been hungry for his spotlight? Or political heavyweights who'd rather fold his energy into their brand than risk him going rogue? I'm not accusing his inner circle. I'm saying the streets are watching how fast the vultures moved. Turning Point's leadership already talking continuity. Other MAGA voices trotting out tributes that read like job applications. Candace swearing she'll guard his legacy while staking a claim as the one who really knew Charlie. And here's the kicker. What if it was none of that? Just one man. One split-second act of violence with no conspiracy strings attached? Even if that's true, it barely matters. In today's world, perception is currency. Candace, Trump, the feeds, they've already framed it as an execution. Once the narrative locks in, facts have a hell of a time catching up.